Welcome to Austin Tech Connect, the official podcast of the Austin Technology Council. Presented to you by Netspend. Homegrown in Austin, Netspend has been a leading provider of consumer and business payment solutions for almost 25 years. From prepaid cards to mobile bank accounts to money movement services, Netspend connects people, brands, and payment products to deliver innovative financial solutions.
Hey there, and welcome to Austin Tech Connect. This is the podcast about the future of Austin's technology community. My name is Tom Singer, and I am with the Austin Technology Council. Every week on this podcast, we try to engage local leaders to hear their stories of success and to get their advice on how we can all thrive. Now, this particular episode is a special edition. It is the recording of our third panel from the 2023 CEO/C-Suite Summit. Every year, the Austin Technology Council puts on this amazing gathering of local leaders so that people can convene, talk, and share. Because when we have more community, collaboration, and conversations, everybody wins. Please enjoy this episode.
Our next panel is sponsored by Growth Acceleration Partners, and I would like to introduce Paul from Gap, who is going to introduce the next panel.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Paul.
Good afternoon. I'm Paul Brownell. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Growth Acceleration Partners. We like to call ourselves Gap. I've been here in Austin for a little over 25 years now. It's become my adopted hometown. And I want to thank Austin Technology Council for putting this together. This is a great opportunity for us to merge together as one technology community. And I appreciate your support and encourage us building Austin Technology Council. It's a part of what makes Austin really a great place to have technology companies. At Gap, we help businesses scale by giving them advice on technology and implementation of technology. Not only that, we also put together the teams that design, build, deliver, and deploy that technology in software and data solutions. In our next conversation, we're going to look at how the world of work has changed post-pandemic, and we're going to see how that can impact culture. Today's panel of local leaders have some interesting insights and ideas about remote work, hybrid schedules, and the impact of AI in our communities. At this time, I'd like to invite the moderator, Joel Trammell from Texas CEO Magazine and CEOS, and the rest of the panel up to discuss Cultivating Connected Cultures, Remote, Hybrid, and AI-Powered Future.
Great to be with you. Good afternoon. I am Joel Trammell, longtime Austin entrepreneur. I spend most of my time these days trying to convince CEOs and executive leadership teams that I know how to run their companies better than they do, usually unsuccessfully, but I try to do that. I take a little pride today in seeing this crowd in the room, as I was involved as a board member of ATC when we started this first CEO Summit, so glad to see we got it back after COVID and all the challenges that presented. So today, the title is Cultivating Connected Cultures, Remote, Hybrid, and the AI-Powered Future. And, obviously we saw a global shift in the workplace because of COVID. We went to remote work almost overnight, many of us, many organizations that had never imagined that they could work remotely did so. And we've all kind of participated in this grand experiment. And so the question's no longer about the feasibility, can we do remote work? We all understand that we can indeed do remote work. The question is about how to maximize productivity, how to build a corporate culture that supports remote work. And it also brings up a lot of questions, not only in the workplace, but about the infrastructure and things like the city that we've built in Austin today, or do we need all these buildings? Do we need the way we've built the modern infrastructure? And so I'm excited to be joined by a distinguished panel here. I'll do some introductions here. So starting closest to me on my left is Joyce Durst, CEO and co-founder of Growth Acceleration Partners. a strategic technology partner headquartered in Austin that works to consult, design, and build revenue-generating software and data solutions for clients. An engineer by trade and a leader by nature, leveraging more than 30 years of experience in the software and tech industry. Bootstrapped from the beginning, Gap has grown into a thriving and profitable business with over 650 Gapsters and offices in Colombia, Costa Rica. And earlier this year, Joyce was named Entrepreneur of the Year. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have to say that was the one award that I told my PR team I wanted when I was running my business. That was the only one. The rest of them I could do without, but that's a great accomplishment. Next is Linda Ginac, the founder and chief executive of TalentGuard, a VC-backed company based in Austin, Texas, specializing in providing workforce intelligence software solutions to global enterprises. Before embarking on her journey with TalentGuard, she founded one of the largest career development firms in the U.S., the Ginac Group. Prior to founding two companies, Linda held several executive leadership roles at local startups, including Cofinity, PC Order, and EPSIAA. Is that how I say that?
Yeah, Fiserv now.
Yep, where she had successful exits. Linda holds a master's degree in career development from JFK University and a bachelor's degree in liberal arts from Norwich University. Author of 2 career development books, and she is on the board of the Austin Technology Council, among others. And then at the far end, Darin HIcks is the CEO of Litlingo, an AI business communication monitoring solution that is the Grammarly for business risk. Previously, Darin was the founder and CEO of Hive9, CEO of Bulldog Solutions, and held senior positions at Axiom and Trilogy. He and his wife, Chris, raised 2 daughters in Austin, who are now in college, and they now split time between Austin and far northwest Texas, Breckenridge, Colorado.
Yes.
If you don't know, Breckenridge, Colorado used to be part of Texas. They stole it from us, but they didn't know we were going to take it back, and we now own 3/4 of it. Darin balances work life with playing soccer, mountain biking, and skiing. So welcome. Please join me in welcoming the panel. So I ask each person to prepare maybe 2 or 3 minutes of remarks just on this topic of culture and remote and hybrid work to kind of set the stage, what's their experience with it, and most importantly, I think for this audience, where do you see that going in the future? We know where we've been, what's it going to look like in the future? So Joyce, you want to lead us off?
Sure, thank you. So it's interesting as we came out of COVID, everybody, don't lie, everybody went into COVID, we shut down all our offices, every one of you told your teams we're only going to be out for 2 or 3 weeks. Right? Yeah, I did too. 2 years later, I was fortunate in that my company we have very nice offices, but we also have people in 17 countries. And so we were already, prior to the pandemic, 2 or 3 days a week work from home. So going full remote was easy. But as we have come out of COVID, we have begun to see, and we'll talk about this more on the panel, a couple of really big challenges. Are my people productive working from home? Yeah, absolutely. That's not the issue. Are we seeing a higher level of mental health issues, especially with young people? Yes, we are. And so we are really working to try and get people to come back together 1 or 2 days a week for mental health reasons, for collaboration, for team building, culture and engagement, all the things that you kind of talk about. And we think it's critical for everyone, certainly the well-being of the company, but for the well-being of the individual. And I think sometimes we as CEOs don't focus on that part quite enough, on how important it is for people to build trust relationships with other human beings.
So thanks. I, as well as Darin here, came from a culture Trilogy/PC Order where we had camps to onboard you for weeks at a time where you would learn what the culture is and you'd get onboarded with that culture and come up with innovative ideas. And so culture has always been a very big part of every company that I've been with, and I think it's something that sustains and grows a company. And our company was off-site, and the first day that I could get back in and try to get the employees back, I did, because I'm somebody who started a company to have relationships with people face-to-face, to have the water cooler talks, to jump on someone's bandwagon when they're on a conversation and try to elevate it and start that diversity of thought. So in our own company, I have a mixture of old and young, and it's interesting for me to navigate that, because when I'm walking by desks and I'm seeing that people are actually in a Teams meeting, on Discord chatting, doing something else on their iPhones, and talking on the phone or texting. It's interesting to me because I have a 27-year-old and a 21-year-old, and they were raised as digital natives. And I think, well, if they're not on this meeting listening and engaging, they have to be totally turned off. And, I've said something to them and to the office, and it's interesting to see that they're multitasking in ways that I've never seen, and it's my generation who's looking at some of the younger generations saying, you got to pay attention. But anytime I ask them a question, they're on target, doing whatever's needed. They're getting their work done, and they're like, "Well, my work's done at 3. Can I leave?" I'm like, "Have you thought about picking up another task or doing something else?" And their day, I come from, what else can I do? I'll work 7 days a week. And they're like, when I'm done, I want to clock out and leave. It doesn't matter how long it takes. So it's just interesting to watch this, as we go from being, I think, 5 days out to 3 to 4 days in, watching the shift in how people are interacting and engaging has been challenging to navigate, because I think you got every minute you got to work, but at the same time, how do you still elevate and keep people productive and keep them moving forward without disenfranchising the way that they see the world and not just through my eyes? So I've been navigating that.
Nice, thank you both. When I think about this topic, for me, it really goes back to the basics first, that we need to be more deliberate and spend time working on the culture in this environment. So what does that mean? It means having a shared mission and being able to communicate that universally throughout the company. Everyone should be able to say the same thing. Second is building trust, and that's not easy when you've never met part of the team face-to-face, but you have to be deliberate about that. And then third, what are the behaviors that you're rewarding and trying to avoid? And so this doesn't sound like, motherhood and apple pie to everyone. What we think about is edge cases for all this stuff. So you as a company, what do you really believe in? And what does that mean as far as a high performer that doesn't fit your culture, and are you willing to make the hard decision there? Or what does it mean when you have a prospect that wants to join you, but they're not quite the right fit, right? And then to really, in our case, go back to basics, it does go back to what Joyce was talking about bringing everyone together on whatever frequency it is to try to reinforce those values.
So I'm curious, Linda talked about the generational issue, and I can remember when I was the young guy at the table, and unfortunately I'm not anymore. But how much do we think generation changed and or circumstances changed? For instance, most of us, when we started our career, the idea that we could work from home wasn't really a consideration. If our boss had told us that, though, hey, you can go work from anywhere, I think most of us would have gone, great, I'd love to. But it just wasn't an option. So how much is it generational expectations are just different, or how do you see that? Have people really changed, or is it just the circumstances they've been exposed to? Now, I call it there was especially with COVID, there become the snow excuse. When I was growing up, there had to be snow on the ground, there had to be ice, the bridge had to be covered, you couldn't walk, people had to be falling down, there were cars on the side of the road, okay, we can cancel school. Now there's a forecast of below 32-degree weather and we can cancel school. That to me is an expectation change, not really a nature of human nature change.
I certainly think generational is a very big part of this. Now the pandemic was the catalyst that said, okay, it's going to force the change. But we now have a generation, I'm kind of on your end of it, we have a generation that has grown up doing everything, as you said, digitally, right? From the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep, they have a digital device, they're attached to. So they are much more comfortable probably than any of us on this stage of meeting people, building relationships, totally online. Now, I think, again, if you look at the statistics that also kind of say where mental health is at right now, you question whether or not all of that is really good and beneficial. And as Darin said, how do we build trust? Our generation expects if you're going to build a level of trust, at some point you got to go be together, break bread, draw on a whiteboard, do all of those things. Now we kind of know some more about each other. Those rules are changing with the generation that's entering the workforce right now, and it's up to us to, if not embrace, at least understand it, so we can build trust with that, that entire new, now largest part of the workforce.
It's interesting. When we first came back to the office and we were having our all-hands meetings, we would see certain people would sit in the conference room, and then we'd have people who were in the office dialing into the meeting from the office. And most of them, were the younger generation dialing in. And, I would encourage everybody to come into the same room to have a meeting. Then I started planning it at the end of the day where we could have a beer and we could relax and start talking about things and get a little bit more casual and whiteboard and have conversations. And it took probably about a year for people to get comfortable with that, because even with the younger generation, when these people were at home on Teams, they maybe, I saw the claps and the smiley faces, but I didn't see a lot of participation in terms of idea generation and challenging the status quo and proposing new ideas and just not being afraid to speak up and speak out. And I'm seeing that change now. So I really think it's because we've been in the office and we've encouraged it, and people are, throwing their hands up and saying, hey, I don't know if this is going to stick, but to me, that's building culture and whatever those values are. So one of mine is resourcefulness. You don't have to have the right idea, but I would love to hear your idea on how you'd like to approach that problem, even if you fall down the first time. So don't be afraid to bring it up. And so I've seen that change over time. I don't know what you guys have seen.
Two quick reactions. One is being online all the time does not correlate with productivity. That you can have, that those are two very different things. And I think there's some generational gap with that, which relates to a second point, which is in some cases, just encouraging people to turn the technology off. We have, we're a SaaS business. Our customers access our system 24 hours a day, and we have some people who are on call on the weekends and those sorts of things. But it's so easy to burn out that way, and so you have to. I think you got to be on top of both sides.
Now, if you read the press, you hear about all us terrible CEOs who just want people in the office so we can feel like we're in power and we can command people around, and it makes us feel comfortable. But instead of asking that question, I want to turn it around and say, okay, you have a 21-year-old child who is entering the workforce. How would you counsel them on dealing with this issue? What type of companies to look for? What behaviors would you tell them will be most rewarded in the workplace if they're trying to build a successful career?
Many, many eons ago, when I entered the workforce, the first job I accepted was with IBM. Fabulous place to start your career. And the reason I accepted that one was the whole first year was more training and education. Like they were going to invest in me as an individual. And what I counsel my friends, almost all of my C-suite has children that are in college, that are going to work in the workforce, and that's what I tell them, because everybody read all the statistics that the remote learning during the pandemic was the worst thing that ever happened to our children ever in education. Work is a learning environment forever. So, I try to encourage all the 20-somethings I know, go someplace where they are going to invest in you. They're going to assign you a mentor. You're going to have peers that you're going to get to learn from. That is how you are going to advance your career the quickest.
Coming from my first job was Digital Equipment Corporation, and right out of college as well. And we had, like IBM, we were known for great training and leadership training, and you could get all the funny videos. And as a career coach, I did that for about 15 years, and I probably coached many people in this room, or their kids, their brothers and wives, and all of that. And the question, I think, is it goes to where they were raised, it does go where they went to school, how they were trained. You can have really ambitious people who are amazing that don't need a lot of training out of the gate. But what I've seen, even in my own business and several of my friends, is that the students, it doesn't matter where they went to school, they're not really prepared to do the job that needs to be done today. And we are having to spend more time on the basic fundamentals of, here's how you put a PowerPoint together, and here's how you send an acceptable email. And we were joking when we were talking on the phone with Joel about the moderation, and I said, when I'm getting emails nowadays, even from my own team, it sounds all like ChatGPT. I can't tell who's writing the email. When I used to know people's voices, now I can't really tell. It's becoming one voice. And I think that part of our conversation is AI, is how do you leverage it, but not lose the identity of each individual, each team, and then our company as a brand, because I can see that is impacting culture internally and my brand going external.
So I do have a recent college graduate daughter, and she, in addition to keeping me humble, she shares these really funny memes of the COVID engineer who built the bridge, or the COVID doctor of various sorts, which is kind of the morbid on the humorous scale. But I find that really encouraging, that they're just acknowledging the fact that, hey, yeah, we might have some catching up to do, right? And then I see them holding each other accountable in different situations for doing just that. Yeah, my first reaction was Joyce's, which is encouraging a place that is more in person, and where you're getting not just a single mentor maybe, but access to lots of mentorships at different levels in the organization. That shows that you're serious about it, right? Assigning just one person and say, good luck, it might be great, but I think companies can do a better job than that, and to make the young people successful now.
I think the challenge actually that we face as leaders is, I know a number of young people that want to go back into the office and they want to have people they're learning from. The challenge is your senior people, because they're like, well, I don't need to be in the office to do my job. I'm like, but part of your job is growing them. Oh, okay. Yes, I guess I need to go do that. But yeah, because you got to get the senior people back in order to grow up the other ones.
So seems to me then the question for us is, what do we do to build an environment where people want to come to work? Because I imagine all of us had jobs at one point in our career where we woke up and were excited to come to work, and maybe we had some jobs where we woke up in the morning and weren't so excited to come to work. But it seems like that's the question for CEOs. You have to build a culture where at least 3 or 4 days a week people want to show up, because they're getting so much out of that they appreciate the value they're getting, like you did in your early career. So what do the CEOs need to do to, you think, facilitate that?
Yeah, I do think learning culture is a very big part of it. I mean, you can always get them to come back for a happy hour every now and then, but that's not going to get them there all the time, and is very expensive. But so I have a company full of engineers. We have 650 people, and like 610 of them are all engineers. So that is really about learning. So as many workshops as we can have, they love to come do hands-on workshops. If we have innovation sessions or hackathons or things where they get to work on problem solving together, that gets them to come to the office. And they always say, and you said, I loved being here. I saw all these people I hadn't seen in a long time, and it was fun. And so it's a little bit of just kind of rebuilding that muscle that, has atrophied over the last few years.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to something you said, Darin, which is mission, and I'll call it the purpose. Why do you want to get up in the morning? Do you care about what you're doing? Do you care about serving the purpose that you've been hired to serve? And for me, my purpose is, your career is my business, and I really care about that. So anybody who cares about someone's career, whether it's their career, their children's career, their brother's career, their sister's career, and they want to do it at scale, that is the mission, that is the purpose, that is why you're here, that is the work we're putting in, that is the output that we want to deliver to the world. And so if you care about that, I want to see you at the office smiling, raising your hand, pushing the limits, because career development is hard. As anybody who's worked for a living, trying to climb up the career ladder as a woman, a people of diversity, whatever it may be for you in your particular situation, and that's what I hammer home with my team. And people also know that I do like to have happy hours, and I do like to drink, and I do like to have a good time. So for most people, I'll say, let's go put a hard day in, and anybody who wants to join me in a drink after, let's go do that. Because I also find that that's where people tell you the truth about what they like, what they don't like, and then they start to open the doors. And I know that can't happen in much larger companies, but mine's still really small. And I use that to try to inspire.
You can drink in a large company. Yeah.
Meaning everybody going out, if you're remote,
okay.
if you're remote.
Just a quick thought. My perspective has changed a little bit from my last company to this one. So my last company, I would have said something like, just set clear expectations, and whether that's 1 day or 3 days, and or so on. The company that I'm working with now, I inherited a team that they built the original culture remote. And they're spread out all over the country and even beyond. So the question we have is, how often do we actually get together, and under what circumstances? So it's difficult to do that, and we've tried to foster some of these collaboration things and customer corner events, and we've done it all online.
Yeah, I would say we have people spread out. We have big centers of people, which is very helpful because they can all come together. But then we have people like maybe there's only 4 or 5 of them. And one of the things we've really encouraged them to do is, as long as you have more than one, can you build a community of just those people? So even though they're on different projects, our people in Bogota, we get them together every couple of weeks, at least once a month, so that they can just, again, get that sense of community, build some social connections that maybe they didn't have before, and and that helps too. It engages them as company people, not just people working on a project.
As an entrepreneur, I can't help start thinking about, well, maybe there's an opportunity here. If I have to figure out how to deal with these people who aren't going to be in the office every day, maybe that opens up my labor pool to a group that wouldn't have worked otherwise. Mm-hmm. Like locations where the cost of labor is cheaper come to mind, but also age things. There are many boomers that are retired, may want to live in a low-cost area, may not want to get in and drive into the office in Austin, Texas every day, but now they're sitting semi-retired in Florida looking for something to do, having a lot of experience. Is there an opportunity here to expand our labor pool, which is in, as we know, pretty hard, short supply, and leverage some people that maybe have stepped out of the workplace or have been hard to leverage in the past?
Yes, certainly, right? And we need that. But you have to be very intentional about it. So, if you're going to hire a remote person, you really want to make sure that person is senior enough, they're comfortable building relationships across the company, asking questions. They don't need a lot of hand-holding. I wouldn't put a, person that just graduated a few months ago out in the middle of nowhere by themselves because they're going to struggle.
Right.
Yeah, we have offices in Mexico City, and we have our Center of Excellence for Development there, and we just finished doing all of the business setup for Ireland. And what was great in the advice that was given to me from IDA Ireland actually is, Lindy, you don't want to hire just one employee to get started, especially because we want that to be our Center of Excellence for customer success. You need to have at least 2 or 3, and When you can do that, that's when you should begin hiring, because you might think it's lonely being a CEO, but when you're an employee who doesn't know the company, in a remote place, who has nobody to lean on, doesn't know your business, they're going to need that structure. And they said, and if you can, hire the leader first, who can build and mentor the team, because that person's going to act and operate much like a CEO, and you're going to really need that support as you transition.
Yeah, and what you guys did too, you also have a cultural issue on top of it, right? So we have people in 19 countries. So there's a lot of cultural issues, but we took the same approach, and we tried to start with, hey, can we get 5? Always the leader first. Can we get 5 so that there really is a pod of people that can rely on each other?
We have people in Colombia and Peru, and then we have the reverse of what you'd think. We have engineers working in the highest cost places in the United States, so Brooklyn, San Francisco, and Seattle, and so on. And these are brilliant people. Thank goodness that we can have them as a part of the team, is how I think about it. And then when we look forward, and already thinking about 2024, there are certain roles where I would only want them here, right? So we can, even if they work remotely 1 or 2 days a week, that's okay, but this position is going to be in Austin. So I think it's just knowing your business and finding people that can fit the role, and then being, I think, tough enough to say no, because might be tempted to hire someone quite kind of outside of these parameters, and it's likely best not to.
I would say with remote people too, at least and we've done a big analysis over every single person on the team, there is a recognition, and I think, Linda, you said this earlier, engagement, building culture and engagement with fully remote people, especially if they're in isolated locations, is harder. Like, whatever efforts you have in place for that, you're going to have to double and triple of them, which usually means a big workload on you, on the leaders, to over-communicate values, over-communicate the why 1,000,000 times over, the purpose over and over. And even after all of that, we tend to find there's just a little bit less engagement from the remote team versus the places where there is a big collection of people.
I noticed you said you said the certain roles you want in Austin. Are you defining that in terms of your critical roles, meaning it could be like your architect or your engineer, or are you are the roles that you want here all executives?
I think all roles are critical for sure, yeah. But I think of it more like what it takes to be successful. And those roles or individuals who might need more of the hands-on mentoring and oversight versus those that are not. And we have one that where we have a specific plan for next year, hiring an intern from UT, for example, and the mentor would be here, and so they have a place to be.
Okay, so we've avoided AI up until now, but it is in the title of the panel, so I guess we have to address it. Obvious question, how does AI change this landscape? And heck, do we even know who's doing the work anymore?
AI changes everything. On one level, it changes everything. So there's a lot of different directions to kind of come at AI, and I think all of us need to kind of evaluate each position and say, and the company, is there a way that more automation, more machine learning, more eventually AI could really help advance the company's objectives? And what we're finding, again, I have a bunch of engineers, that answers yes. So all 550 of the engineers are, and have been for months, being trained in AI. The do's, the don'ts, how you be safe, how you be compliant, and how you be more productive. So AI will be in use by everyone on the engineering team for certain kinds of tasks. It's fully in use across the marketing team, all kinds of AI tools. The people team is looking at a lot of stuff. And so we're running a lot of experiments. So I think we have to accept that AI is a part of it. Now, what it can't do is it can't replace values, and it's not can't replace culture. That still all has to be built by hand, one step at a time.
I have to think about the practical use of AI to operate our business, and then we have to think about the practical application of AI in the application that we bring to the market, and they're two very different things. And then when you decide that you're going to adopt it as a business practice, whether it's ChatGPT or Jasper, there's a whole upskilling training program on prompt engineering and how do you build your voice into, I don't know if you guys tried the ChatGPT, it said, learn how to personalize it for you. And when I did that, I undid it because it always ended everything with Linda wants to be a unicorn. So, it's still got a long way to go. But it doesn't, and then if somebody's using one tool and someone's using another, I think if you're going to look at it as an organization, you have to look at it and say, what tools do we want to adopt, just like Salesforce or Pardo or QuickBooks or whatever it might be for your business. And if you're going to adopt that, how do we teach people how to do prompt engineering in a real way to build in the voice of the culture that way? And then also for us in the practical application of AI in our application, it's whose career is it anyway? And we don't want to put so much AI in it that it's no longer human assisted. We want people to still be passionate about their careers and think about where they want to go and navigate it, but not so much that all the person is doing is acting on recommendations. So it's an experiment really at this time.
We're an AI company, and so yeah, for the engineers for sure, they're using it daily, and there's a really, there are litmus tests that your engineers can share with you about how to use it wisely. We sell to lawyers, so I also got a recent legal education about the use of AI. Be careful, right? Be careful, because the input, if you're inputting confidential information and things into ChatGPT, ask your legal team about how they feel about that. A flip side of that is what we do for our clients is monitor their email and chats, and some companies shrink from that, but it's a business communication platform, and you guys own it. And a very wise lawyer told me the E in email stands for evidence. and the headlines now about companies getting in trouble for all of their evidence, right, on your company's communication platform, it can be fraught with risk. So, that's...
So I'm old enough certainly to remember several of these paradigm shifts. I remember seeing the first personal computers and thinking, okay, that's a big deal. I remember the first time somebody showed me the internet and I went, okay, that seems like going to be a big deal. I get that. This was the first time in a while that I had that same reaction the first time I looked at ChatGPT. But the interesting part, those earlier revolutions, all us engineers, all us STEM people were the beneficiaries, right, and built our careers. But is this the revenge of the English majors and philosophy majors? I mean, because it's all about now the subtleties of language and things that are very different. And programming, is programming going to be how good a book you can write?
We have a full-time linguist at Litlingo. And we're the intern I referred to. Yes, we're hiring more. So if you know any great UT linguists.
So if you have a child with an English major, don't fret. There may be a future, because I have one. I'm hoping. I'm hopeful. What do you see from the? It looks like we're going to have a lot of different regulation around AI, and different locations are going to treat it very differently. I was reading about the Chinese. Of course, I would expect them, no surprise, to be very closed in their thinking around items like this. We wouldn't want to let people talk about strange ideas. Historically, the West has been a little more open. Are you seeing any of that play out yet, or is it too early for that?
Yeah, we're absolutely seeing that, and it's at the state level as well. So you have to be able to describe the way with which you're using and applying the AI. And we don't do any applicant tracking or recruiting, but we definitely deal in internal transitions, which means we deal in talent pools. We know who's in the talent pool, how long they've been in the talent pool, who's getting promoted, who isn't getting promoted, and then all the data around the performance reviews. So we have a lot of data, so we have to be very careful with how we use the feedback that is giving to continue to train our AI models so that it's not biased. And we haven't figured it out, but our CTO went to Georgia Tech and has his master's degree in AI, and that ethical AI it's a real issue in figuring out how to do it best. And I don't think anybody has quite figured it out yet, but it's coming. The policies are coming.
Yeah, it's a hard thing. I mean, you run your own experiments on Ask. Here was one I did last week. Ask Bard, ChatGPT, whoever you want to, what are all of the ways that Superman can use AI? Then ask the same question, what are all of the ways that Wonder Woman can use AI? And what you're going to see are the inherent biases that are out in the world of data, because Superman gets to do all of the very manly, strong things, protect the world from crime and fly around the world and stop natural disasters. And Wonder Woman gets to use her interpersonal skills to try to resolve conflict between world leaders.
That's great.
Yes, exactly.
I'm going to now try that,
Yeah, we should, yeah. So
great example.
There's a lot of the world of ChatGPT is filled with all of the data that the world has put out there. So it can't help but have some inherent bias that we now, as preparing for the next generation of AI, need to kind of improve upon and at least be aware of when you're asking it questions that you're going to try to provide answers to someone else based on that data.
Fascinating. Darin, I mean, this is your world.
Yeah, a guy named Max Tegmark wrote a great book about the control problem with AI, and he's written a lot of great books, but this one is on the mark. The smartest people in AI are worried about the control problem, but there's initial design that goes into it about basically being able to, like, who's really in charge, right? And it's easy not to do it, but there's a way to do it right. And he has initiated a group of leaders that are signing on to a way of doing that. And it seems like all these really smart people in AI are open to the government playing a role, which is positive. And hopefully our leaders are going to get or listen to the guidance to do it well.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble not laughing at our leaders listening to the guidance to do it well. That would be a first.
Trying to be an optimist.
Okay, trying to be an optimist. Okay. Well, I think now's a good time to open it up to questions from the audience. I think we've brought up a lot of interesting comments, and I'm sure there's some questions to be had.
One of the questions that I have when I hear about culture and building culture, especially working with younger generations, is the difficulty they have in making decisions. That the groupthink sort of stymies them to make a decision or to make a hard stop on iterating over and over and over again until a decision has to be made. In business, my experience, it's a matter of solving problems. At some point, you have to make a decision and move forward. Can you speak to that in terms of your experience?
Yeah, so I teach on this very subject. So what you're talking about is just a human spectrum of behaviors, right? Some people are very quick decision makers. We do it intuitively. We do it with our gut. We do it quickly. Some people can't really make a decision until they've checked with everybody else in the group because their decision-making process is a consensus-making process. That's a scale of human behavior, and people fall. Now, you will learn, of course, in business, and you'll be trained, and there are studies that reflect this, that in general, it's better for the leader to make quick decisions. Okay, that's generally rewarded because the truth is you're making the decision emotionally. You don't really know the correct answer, so it's better to go ahead and be wrong quickly and then change than it is to wait around, analyze, and think you're going to figure out the right decision if you just wait long enough. And so that is something that, to me, in my opinion, you have to train your workforce in, is understanding their natural behavioral tendencies and then explain to them why, getting uncomfortable, making decisions a little faster is going to be more productive. But only about 9% of the human population is the type of people who love making quick decisions. And so 91% of the population doesn't like being forced to make quick decisions. So that's uncomfortable for them. So that's a skill you have to train like anything else, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that competency, and we did talk about this earlier, actually on our call, because what I've seen is it's about the way that we've trained our children, or not even us, the parent, but the gaming industry has trained our children to achieve levels of proficiency, and then they change the game. So, for example, in an Xbox game, they're trained to win at all costs, and they will iterate and they will learn the exact path for that level to get to the next level. And then they do it over and over, and they iterate so that they can get past level 1, level 2. Now they're on level 3, and they're going to iterate. So in my culture and in my mind, when I'm dealing with somebody who's younger, and I think it goes back to coming in the learning and development, and are they prepared? I think they are prepared, but they're prepared in very different ways. I didn't grow up with Xbox. I think I played Atari or Nintendo or something like that. I'm probably dating myself, the little ping pong. But I've seen that the work that some of the younger generation puts out, it's better because they are iterating it over and over and over again. But to them, I think they're treating it more like how they've been trained online in games to keep achieving another level and another level and another level. And I think it's up to us to figure out how to take that type of learning and help them say that this is enough, put it down, let's come back to something else, or iterate something else over here. And I don't have the answer yet, but I can see when I'm watching people, just observing their behavior, that I see that similar style in the workplace playing out as if it were a game. And remember, gaming isn't of one, it's an entire group where they're learning and iterating and doing it together. And I think that's why they're more comfortable online, because they're chatting, they're playing, and they're winning together.
I think you've hit on a really good example of illustrating a company's culture, and there's a healthy spectrum in there that you could fall on either side of it, and it's not healthy. The spectrum on one end is kind of a startup culture. We're never going to have perfect information. Let's go. Fail fast, right? And then there's what a type of culture that HP became famous for is more consensus. And so you kind of figure out where you are, and you actually talk about it with your teams, right? And what I think there was a real example, and I'm losing track of the exact citation, but this is in my original thought, is that if you have a culture and you say, oh, we value innovation, and then a project fails, what do? Do you freak out and you all over people, or do you go encourage that team and say, yes, you go try again, So you have to actually live up to that if you're gonna fail fast and make it a part of your culture.
Yeah, so, people talk about values all the time, but most of the time they talk about values, they're really talking about virtues, which are those things that we all agree are good things. We want honest, thrifty, brave, clean, reverent, Boy Scout code, whatever. But this is a value because it's a trade-off. Where do you want to put the line? And it's perfectly reasonable for one company to put it here and one company to put it here, but you better walk the talk if you say that. Next question.
So I think there's been a push. I'm turning left now. Different question. But there's a theme right now, I think, in big and small companies about employee monitoring, and putting it on their computers and watching how many clicks and the facial recognition. And how do you guys feel about that, and where do you see that direction going?
We do that for a living at Litlingo. But I think we monitor for very specific illegal behavior. And we tell everyone what we're doing before we actually do it, which I think is really important. So, hey, the approach is we're more helping good-intentioned people avoid bad mistakes. And if you approach it that way, then a machine actually helping you is more acceptable, certainly from an employee's point of view, more acceptable than a team of lawyers, of individuals reading all of your email, right? Which you don't want to have happen. So I think there's a line there of where AI can be a helper versus a big brother.
Yeah, on the general kind of topic of monitoring, so, Darin's company is, again, really trying to monitor for illegal activity, and a machine can do that in the background. On the general thing where CEOs are like, well, I need to monitor my people because they're not in the office anymore, and I don't know if they're really, and I've heard, a couple of people like, I'm watching where their eyes are on the screen to see how many, it's like, you've already lost, like, just forget it, you've lost. In my business, we are building intellectual property for our clients, and we kind of know, like, you either turned in the work on the sprint, and you checked in code, or you didn't. We don't have to do anything else, right? And the team kind of self-monitors, and like, this person right here never helps. They're not carrying their weight. That's, let's go back to being performance-based cultures to where everyone pitches in to help make the team goals. And, again, my own personal values, I would much rather enter into a relationship as I trust you to do your job. And if you do it, everything's going to be great. And if you don't, well, we'll have a different conversation. And that's worked great for us.
This is an AI-related question, and I don't know if you guys have been following the EU AI Act, but just curious if you have any thoughts, predictions, impressions on if the US will set up any other form of legal framework for how AI is used. It's very similar to GDPR in the EU, and in California is, I think, one of the only states that actually has a privacy sort of specific legislation. So I was just curious off the back of that if you have any thoughts on what the US might do around AI.
Sure, yeah. So you're right, GDPR, right? Europe was the leader in protecting data privacy, and a quick soapbox moment, we have to do that here, right? We have to. And so if Europe comes up with a good framework, I do think the U.S. will at least look at it and adopt it. Like if we were to adopt a GDPR here, I think it'd be maybe a little lighter touch, for example. And so I think experimentation at this stage is a good thing. Europe can try it out. I think what the U.S. Entrepreneurs would say is like, don't stifle innovation, right? Here, and here. So you got to balance out the light touch with the right amount of regulation.
Okay, last question. As far away from Tom as possible so we can make sure he gets in his steps today.
Thank you, sir.
The game at the end will be guessing how many steps Tom did today so far.
Question about the hybrid work situation or remote versus, I'm curious as to your experiences. Sounds like you got a little bit of spread. In my last role, we did a pretty extensive breakdown of the impact in some more detail on the trade-offs. And so I had a little bit of different experience. So we found actually higher productivity overall. Now, as measured by like hitting tasks, KPIs and milestones and such. What we found as a trade-off was lower innovation. So if you're measuring productivity by innovation, that definitely took a hit. We also found lower retention because people just weren't engaged. They weren't as invested in the other people with whom they were working. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if you could maybe talk a little bit about those three and maybe any other sort of KPIs of their own on hybrid work.
Well, I'm a big picture guy. So, anytime you run an organization, it's fundamentally a communication problem. And sitting here looking at you, we communicate a lot more information than I do over that Zoom screen. And so I just cannot wrap my mind around, at the grand scale, it's more productive. Yes, some individual workers might produce more than they were producing before, but overall, for the value of the organization, I just can't wrap my mind around it being more productive.
That's even if they have the Zoom
I'm an
on.
old school guy, I guess.
Right. Or you get distracted. When somebody else is on there, they're eating their lunch or they're doing something, I can't help but try to figure out what they're doing, what's going on over there. So it just takes me off task. And then I find it hard to innovate online. I
do too, and maybe that's generational. I'm definitely a whiteboard person. But back to the level of engagement, I think that's the true question over time. So I think remote workers absolutely on a task basis can be highly productive. It's kind of like deep work. Get us all out of meetings for a day and let us just work, and oh my gosh, we're very highly productive. But over a long term, where you really want to engage people to buy into the mission of the customer, the mission of the company, the mission of the team, it feels to me that if you leave them totally remote and you don't figure out other ways to engage them, they basically become freelance contractors. Now you're paying them, but they're basically freelance contractors, and that's why you see retention go down because, well, I'm not really connected to this company, so I'll just go take a higher paycheck from this other one. One of the things that we worked on, some study we read, is especially for your remote employees, you have to find at least 2 points of connection to the company. And so they're on some project, they're in a department, that's one connection, but you have to find one other. Is that a social club that you have at the company? Is it, there are centers of excellence that they're involved in, best practices, but some other, you have to get at least 2. If you can get 2, the level of engagement goes up dramatically. And so that's what we kind of look at for every person. What are they really interested in? Technically, professionally, do they have kids, pets, whatever? How do we engage them in their life, not just their one project? If we can do that, we have a chance of keeping them.
I think that was the one benefit of COVID is you could actually talk personally again and not keep everything off limits,
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Darin, Linda, and Joyce. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you.
We hope that you enjoyed this special edition of Austin Tech Connect. If you would like to hear the other 2 panels from the 2023 Summit, the last 2 episodes of this podcast, last week and the week before, are panels number 1 and panel number 2, so be sure to check those out. And thank you for tuning in to this show. And we want to make sure that your company is supporting the growth of our tech community and the future. We would like you to become involved with the Austin Technology Council. If we're going to be a grassroots organization, we can't do this alone. It's really up to you. We need the grassroots leaders, those civic-minded entrepreneurs who want to come together and help Austin thrive. Please join the Austin Technology Council today.
Thanks for listening to the Austin Tech Connect podcast. Make sure your company is a member of the Austin Technology Council and add your voice to the future of our tech ecosystem in Central Texas.